I definitely ascribe to really trying to co-regulate and manage my own emotions and all of those things, having conversations, explaining. But at the end of the day, like I think there's a big difference between gentle parenting and permissive or passive parenting.
Today's episode is brought to you by one of my favorite parenting travel hacks ever, the Ride Safer Travel Vest by Safe Ride for Kids. If you've ever traveled with little kids, you know the pain of lugging bulky car seats through airports or paying for pricey rental seats that honestly don't always feel the safest. The Ride Safer Vest changes all of that. It's a certified, legal, incredibly lightweight alternative to a traditional car seat, designed to keep kids safe and make travel easier for parents. My kids wore theirs on our last Disney trip, and it was comfortable, secure, and small enough to fit right in their backpacks. If you want stress-free travel with little ones, check out Ride Safer Travel Vest at saferideforkids.com. Trust me, you'll never travel the same way again. Welcome back to the Running Wine Mom podcast. I'm your host, Samantha Cieslinski, aka the Running Wine Mom. Today, we're diving into a topic that so many of us feel deeply, but don't always talk about out loud: maternal mental health. The identity shifts, the invisible load, the joy, the overwhelm, and the courage it takes to keep growing while raising tiny humans. And I could not think of a more perfect guest for this conversation than Brittany Gallagher, licensed clinical social worker and founder of the Mom Chat Therapy and Wellness. Brittany is on a mission to make moms feel seen, supported, and never alone in their mental health journey. She blends clinical expertise with lived motherhood experience. And what I love most is how she helps women reconnect with themselves, not in spite of motherhood, but through it. So without further ado, let's welcome Brittany. Welcome.
Hi, Samantha. Thank you so much for having me and for the warm welcome.
I'm so excited to have you. And to start each episode, we have our Wine, Wine, and Win of the Week segment. This is where I share our favorite bottle of wine, then
Okay.
about something that has been bothering us, and celebrate our recent victories. So grab a glass, take a deep breath, and let's get started. So, Brittany, what is your drinking wine of the week?
So it's actually funny. I just recently had this conversation with someone. I'm like very much a seasonal wine drinker. I do like whites and rosé in the spring and
Yeah.
summer, and then transition to red. And I don't know what is going on, but I'm like not really having a taste for red wine these days, which is like very out of character for me. So I said to my husband before I came on, I was like, what's my favorite drink? He's like, a dirty martini, of course. So I'm just like been into the dirty martinis lately.
Yes. You are like my soul wine slash cocktail sister in this, because I am the same exact way. And it's so funny because I've been ordering like white wine out, and I'm like, why am I doing this? And last night we were out to dinner, and I'm like, I'm gonna order a dirty kettle with blue cheese stuffed olives. So
Yes,
there you go.
yes, yes. If they offer the blue cheese, I'm always
Oh yeah.
going for it.
So what is your WHINE, your complaint of the week?
My complaint wine of the week. That's actually, you know what I'll say? I'll say this is one that I've been like Googling myself. I'm in that stage of toddlerhood with my daughter where she repeats every single thing she says 5,000 times, and there's no other way I could answer her in a more clear, concise way. And she just keeps saying it over and over. And I know it's completely developmentally appropriate, but it's one of those things where I am just like, oh my God, like how many more times can I possibly say that? So that is definitely my wine of the past like 2 months or so, I would say.
Yes. It is hard, and they're asking you a question, and it follows with a question and then another question, and it's like, I don't want to say I don't know, but like I
Yeah,
don't know.
like I don't know. Yes, for sure.
So what's your win of the week?
Win of the week. I'm super excited. I actually just got an email that I am a finalist in a local, I don't even know what to call it. It's like a local nomination. It's called the Bergen County, like Best of Bergen. So I was just nominated as a finalist in alternative medicine and complementary services. So I'm super excited about that with through the mom.
That's amazing. Congrats. That is super exciting. I feel like those awards and recognitions are so needed for when you're an entrepreneur and you're doing things. You don't always know what your impact is, but to have something like that, it's
100%.
super important.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's one of those things where it's like super little, but it means a ton. So it was a very exciting email to open today.
That's wonderful. And so I always ask my guests, what's one significant challenge you've successfully navigated shaping your journey to where you are today?
I think it's just overcoming some own self-doubt and fear. I think for me, more recently, has been the biggest one. I had been a private practice owner prior to having kids when I lived in Hoboken and was kind of living like the single, like married life without kids. And then to dive back into this was definitely like a big leap of faith, and just
Hmm.
sort of overcoming some of that, self-doubt or fear has definitely been part of what's shaped, my journey and to get me where I am today for sure.
That's awesome. And it's important to, fear is something I feel like everyone that I talk to on this podcast, so many say like the fear has been holding them back. And then, they're so successful for it. And I just like to, remind the listeners that if fear is stopping you, just go through it because there is success on the other side.
100%. Yeah. It
Yeah.
can be like one of the biggest roadblocks, but once you can kind of just plow through that, you're like, oh, wow, okay, that actually wasn't so bad, or I am capable.
Yeah, we overthink. So for fitness, what's your favorite way to stay active?
Well, I have to say, I love your whole concept because I am a previous marathon runner.
Oh, yay.
Yeah, I ran the New York City Marathon twice. One, God, more than 10 years ago. And then not this past one that was like 2 weeks or last week, but the
You're
year
right.
before. Although I can't say that I keep up with running so much anymore. I was like big into the Peloton for a while. And then I actually just recently, over the past maybe 2 weeks, just started going back into studio fitness. And that has been something that I've been like really looking to explore. I've been trying all different types of places in the area, and I finally found a studio that I like. And so I'm doing like the intro unlimited month, and I'm just like, I'm loving being back with the energy and all that stuff. It's been really nice.
Yeah, as much as I love running, good group fitness class is so good, I feel like socially. And I also ran the New York City Marathon twice, probably different years than you, but I always love talking to people who ran it because I can still, like when I'm speaking of it now, feel the energy of that day, even though, again, I think I did it like 2016 and 2017, and it was just,
It's the
I
best.
guess,
Yeah, there's nothing like
electrifying.
it. Yeah, it really
Nothing.
it does change you. I know they say that and it's like so corny and cliche, but it really does change you.
Yeah, well, that's why I did it 2 years in a row because I was like the first year, I was like, "Well, I was not actually expecting this." And then I was able to do it again the next year because I was like, "I need to experience this again just to like kind of take it all in," which sounds crazy to over 26, point 0.2 miles, but I feel like you understand.
I do. Well, yeah, and there's only I feel like, if you've done a marathon, we're like have that bond of that level of crazy that, other people are just like, no, like I don't understand it.
Yeah. So how does maintaining your fitness routine align with your mental health?
Very much so. Although I will say it's certainly been a journey in regards to, I think, sort of undoing some millennial diet and fitness culture that I think we were all exposed to growing up. But I've been an athlete my whole life. And so then it really just became part of, just maintaining that now that I'm obviously outside of the realm of like organized sports and things like that. But I will say, the days, and it doesn't get any easier to wake up early and, or to make the time for yourself. But the days that I commit to it and I do it, I'm able to show up in such a different way for my clients, for my kids, my husband, my family, my friends. So there's just no two ways about it. They go hand in hand.
And I saw something actually earlier today, and it said, your kid won't remember your 4:45 alarm going off, but they'll remember your energy that you brought to the day, and that is because of that 4:45 alarm, which I was like, "Ugh."
100%. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny you say that because, I think part of the reason why I've been having such a difficulty like getting back into group fitness and just like being able to leave my home and not working out amongst the toys in my basement. But, it's because I'd have to go at 5 AM, and I
Right.
did that this morning, and I said to my kids earlier, I was like, "Oh, mommy went to the gym this morning." And my son was like, "What?" But I'm still, like, ready to go, and, like, I was joking, but I said, I'm like, "And this is, like, the benefit, right?" I'm still, like, having fun, and it really does make such a difference.
I agree. So tell us about your family, about your little
Yeah.
unit.
Yeah, absolutely. So I live in Bergen County, New Jersey. I am a born and raised Jersey girl. I grew up in Essex County, so not it's like 30 minutes from where I am now. I have three kids. I have my oldest son, Owen, is going to be 8 in January. So we're a couple weeks shy. He's in second grade. Then I have a 5-year-old, Patrick, and my daughter, Kira, is 2.5. Actually, also, Patrick just turned 5.5, which was a huge milestone for
Big
him, as
deal.
you can imagine. And then my husband, Dan, we'll be married for 10 years coming this July, coming up.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we met, back in Hoboken and through the party days and all that stuff. And he's originally from Bergen County too. So it's been a nice, sort of like an easy merge of lives and families and all that stuff.
So fun. And what were you least prepared for in parenthood?
Well, that's a loaded question.
I know. You're like, where do you want me to start?
Yeah, seriously. I say this slightly in jest, but I'm being 100% serious. I think one of the most challenging things that I remember being like, holy crap, when I became a mom was like, I can never, not never, but most of the time, not do things when I want to do them anymore.
Hmm.
It's not that I don't have the ability to do them, but like going to the gym at 5 a.m., I don't want to do that. I want to go to the gym, but not at 5 a.m., or even if it's like taking a shower or this or that, like any of that stuff. I think that was one of the biggest like shockers to me was just like, wow, I'm really having to continue to make sure I'm still prioritizing myself, but it's not going to happen in the same way. I think that was like a
Right.
really big like awakening for me to recognize that and to overcome. And I think I'm still, working on that.
And I feel like I've actually never heard anyone put it into words like you just did, because as I'm thinking of it, it's like, yeah, I can still do all of these things, but it's just in a different time frame. And the puzzle pieces of trying to put all that together is what stresses us out.
Yes, 100%. Right. Because a lot of us, we sort of had a plan, a routine, a way that we liked to do things, as of
Hmm.
course we do. And when that shifts, all of our responsibilities, priorities, everything shifts, everything along that shifts too. And I think a lot of times people can feel like, oh, well, I can't do that
Hmm.
anymore. There are some things that, yes, maybe that does shift, but it's more about like, how do we have the flexibility to see that maybe you can, it's just going to happen in a different.
Yeah. So what do you think your parenting style is?
My parenting style, I am like, I'm sure you've seen those reels and memes where it's like, the gentle parent, but then like on a flip of a switch, there's like some 2000s hip hop going and like, don't cross me. I definitely ascribe to, really trying to co-regulate and, manage my own emotions and all of those things, having conversations, explaining. But at the end of the day, like, I think there's a big difference between gentle parenting and permissive or passive parenting, which I don't ascribe to. I think it's so important to hold boundaries, to be consistent, to be firm. There's one sort of influencer doctor that I follow on social media, and he says the two most important things are kindness and firmness in parenting. And I
Yeah.
really agree with
I totally agree with that. And I think some people get a little nervous in parenting where they think like setting a boundary is going to make their kid not like them. And I feel because I also teach high schoolers, and I felt like when I went into teaching, I was like, everyone's going to love me. I am going to be like the teacher that like broke these, like, whatever. And then all of a sudden I was like, this is actually not working. And now having, and that was something that did prepare me for parenthood, was like having these boundaries and these expectations makes my job so much easier to have like a fun time.
you. Yes.
And I just think it's hard for people to kind of like not get that sometimes.
Absolutely. Yeah, like, and also to your point too, like, it's okay if they don't like me.
Right, right.
They love me,
Exactly.
right? And they're not
Yeah.
going anywhere, right? But it's okay that they're gonna be uncomfortable or not like what we're,
Hmm.
the boundary that we're setting. But as, to your point, and I spent a bunch of years in public education too, like the children just thrive off of
Yeah.
boundaries and structure.
And it's important also that they are upset sometimes and they learn how to work with it and work through it.
Yes. Yeah. And that is such a huge thing that I talk about a lot with my clients is like, I just want my kids to be happy and healthy. And I think Dr. Becky was recently speaking about that. And she was like, that drives me nuts. I'm like, oh my God, me too. Like, that's not the goal. Health, sure. Happiness,
Right.
no, that's not my goal.
Yeah.
My goal is to actually have my child be able to regulate themselves throughout any type of emotion. And the
Right.
goal is not happiness because that's just not realistic. We're not happy all of the time.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so true. So what's one piece of advice that you would give to other parents?
You gotta take care of yourself. I know it's just, like, so, again, sort of cliche, but the whole airline, put your
Hmm.
oxygen mask on first, but there is just truth to it. I really don't believe that you can show up the best way possible for your children and your family without taking care of yourself, aside from the fact that our kids are watching every single thing that we do. And so, more importantly than what we say to them, it's what we're doing. And so, if we're demonstrating how we care for ourselves, they're going to learn that. And, there's so many women that I work with when I say, well, like, share with me how, if you had a mother figure in your life, how did they care for themselves? And they're like, I didn't see that. I don't know. I never had that example. Right. And so, how are we sort of just expected to know? Need that guide and that role model. So I think, it really comes you have to prioritize your own health and
Yeah.
whatever that looks like, that's gonna look different for everybody.
Yeah. And that is like my mom always prioritized running. Like she still runs 60, she's going to be 67 and she still runs all the time. And as you were saying that, I immediately thought my mom, like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going out for a run. That was something that she never compromised for. And that's why I'm like, I feel like fitness is something to prioritize for yourself.
Absolutely. And I would imagine, and not that anyone's free of any kind of like the mom guilt, but I would imagine, right, because of that experience, right? I had two parents, my dad and my stepmom growing up, like they were always very big into physical fitness of
Hmm.
like all different kinds. And like, I don't really have a ton of guilt when I have to,
No.
I'm like, I'm out of here, right? Like, this is
Right.
very important. I need to prioritize it because they didn't feel any, right? And that was just
Yeah.
sort of passed down to us, right? It was a value and something, so I think in that way, like a lot of times that's what I'll say to parents, like, even if this feels so hard or so uncomfortable, like if this is a skill that you want your children to have,
Right.
you need to be able to demonstrate that for them.
And I also think like, I mean, and you can probably think about it too, like when they went to go work out, like when my mom went to run, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, she's leaving me. Like, I was like, good for her. I don't really want to go do that.
100%. And even if I did, it was like probably when I was really little and I don't even
Right.
remember that, right? But certainly
Right.
not as like a teenager. I didn't even I could care less, right? I'm like,
No.
great, they're off doing their thing,
Yeah.
like it worked for everybody.
Yeah.
But it really did just instill, that it's a priority and a value.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into you. Tell us about the mom chat and what was the moment you realized you wanted to center your work around motherhood and maternal mental health rather than just like general therapy.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in the mental health field for, 15-ish
Hmm.
years. And I certainly did not always specialize in maternal mental health. I spent the majority of my career working in special education and public school system. However, with a more recent transition, and it didn't even happen right when I became a parent, a little bit later, but I think having my personal experiences in motherhood while also seeing a lot of friends and family alongside me having their experiences becoming a parent. One dear friend of mine in particular who really struggled with some postpartum depression and more severe and, impacting her functioning type of issues postpartum. It was sort of this like, we need help, and like
Right.
there's really, not a ton of conversation about it. There's not a ton of support. And I happened to be on a maternity leave and start like exploring what my options were in regards to a shift in my career. And this just was sort of like all of the stars were aligned. And, so I've been really focusing on this niche for the past several years and launched the mom chat really only maybe like 6 months ago. So it's
That's
like
awesome.
my brand new baby, my 4th baby, and have just been really nurturing it, through social media and networking and, all of that stuff. And it's been great. I find such I feel like I get so much in return in doing this work that I do with the women that I'm working with and just sort of in this space and community. And it's been amazing.
That's awesome. So another thing that I saw is, you've talked about training and modalities like cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and yet you still emphasize that each woman's experience in motherhood is unique. So like, how do you balance the structure of tools of therapy with the messy, unpredictable realities of motherhood in your practice?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, and it's something that I really try to focus on right off the bat, like, even with if it's, like, a prospective new client, because there is always, like, the theory and best practice versus
Right.
reality, right?
Yep.
And it's, like, one thing for me to be like, "Okay, we'll go home and spend 30 minutes," and people are like, "Okay, that's literally not possible," you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And so I think what we have to do is really kind of taking these very, scientific, research-based approaches, but how do we make them relatable
Right.
to a mom in the thick of what's going on? And a lot of that does take a little bit of trial and error.
Mhm.
You have to be willing to say, like, I am going to try something that I've never tried before, and I'm going to experiment with it a little bit. And I'm going to give you, meaning me, the feedback that was really helpful for me, or like that totally missed the mark. I could not access that skill or tool in the moment. And then, okay, that's fair. That's just not for you, because part of the process is identifying everyone's toolbox of how they're managing, anxiety, overwhelm, mom rage, whatever it is going to be slightly different. So there is a little bit of that trial and error piece, but it's really saying, like, what are these micro moments that I can take throughout my day? We don't have 30 minutes. We don't have an hour. We don't have a weekend away all of the time. So, what am I doing on a very consistent basis, these micro moments throughout my day, whether it's proactive, whether it's in the moment, whether it's to kind of get ourselves more regulated, to really try to mostly, it's about like regulating the nervous system when we're in that
Mhm.
phase because we're so overstimulated, but also figuring like, what are some of the triggers that I have? What's going on? Why am I reacting this way? Why am I feeling this way? And uncovering and doing some of that work too.
And parenthood certainly brought out many triggers for me that I did not even know were like existing. And so it's hard to really like be teaching yourself while also like in real time managing it with your kids, which is really, really difficult.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's part of it too, is like that's the conversation that's not always talked about. It's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
yes, of course your life is gonna change," but we don't really talk about to like what extent,
Right.
that your life changes. And it does, it brings up everything, right? It's like
Hmm.
now you have shifting relationships with your caregivers, parents, in-laws, if you have that,
Hmm.
friends, everything shifts. And to your point, there's just so much that comes up where you're like, that was just never even a part of my everyday life. I didn't know
Yeah.
something that was going to be challenging for me.
Right.
Yeah,
So on your site, you wrote, "Together we will build a plan that's thoughtfully tailored to your needs, one that helps you find relief and reconnect with a life where you feel grounded, present, and truly engaged with what matters most." When you say truly engaged with what matters most, I want to know, what does that look like for you in your own life right now?
yeah, that's a great question. And something I talk about all the time. I feel like I'm like, all I say is the word values, values. But
Right.
there is this huge piece, particularly like it's a huge life transition, right? Becoming a mom. A lot of our priorities, our values, as they should, begin to shift,
Hmm.
right?
Right.
So it's the piece of identifying like what is important to me now, what do I need to prioritize. And I think for me, one tool that I've been using, especially as my kids are getting, a little bit older, I still have a toddler at home, but elementary school age and navigating different things, is really using this temperature read for myself of, if I'm out doing something, is that bringing me moments of joy? Is that giving me energy? Is that making me feel good? Or am I leaving something and I'm like, God, whether it was like someone I was talking to, like, why did I
Hmm.
say that? Or like, oh, I really don't want to hang out with that person. I said I was going to do this, but now I don't want to, right? That's an indication that that thing or person or like that's no longer really in line with me and my values.
Hmm.
And so I think I'm in a place right now where, I'm going to be approaching 40 next year, and just like a different phase of life is really trying to identify, what feels good, what is, the at the heart of, spending time with family, prioritizing friendships and relationships, building my business. And that's going to look different than, the things that I was into in my early 30s or in my 20s or, things like that.
Yeah, which is okay. Like, I feel like also people need to be okay with everything changing and finding new happiness in their days, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, we're evolving, right? I mean, no
Yeah.
one wants to be stagnant. That's not the goal.
Right.
Knowing that when things change, things within you, your priorities, your values shift, other people are going to have feelings about that and opinions, and it's okay, but we still like we have to set boundaries and make different choices, and that's okay.
Yeah. So another phrase I did not know until I was a mom was the mom load.
Yeah.
So like the invisible burdens, the mental load, the second guessings, guilt, the rage, the joy, and you help mothers navigating all of that. But what's one invisible piece of the mom load that you believe deserves more public attention, and why do you think that would be?
I think the biggest piece with when we're talking about, the invisible load is there's so much work that gets done behind the scenes.
Mhm.
And, I'm sure you've probably seen this on Instagram too, right? It's like the reel of the mom and she's just scrolling on her phone, like
Mm.
seemingly relaxing, but it's like she's ordering,
Yeah.
uniforms and a birthday present and this and that. I think, the part that needs more attention is the women who are managing all of that and
Mhm.
potentially working a full-time job, and how are the expectations sort of divvied up within the family. If you're in a two-parent working household, is society really built to support women who are still the default caregiver for
Mhm.
their children most of the time, but then also balancing part-time, full-time, whatever type of, job outside of the home too? And are we set up for success in order to be able to do that without feeling this like immense sense of overwhelm and burnout and anxiety, and all of that other stuff? I question whether we're set up for success or not.
I know. And I do feel like our generation is getting it's all kind of newer for it because I feel like, yeah, there were plenty of working moms when we were growing up, but I feel like it was a lot more common to have maybe a stay-at-home parent. And then all of a sudden, you're seeing the way that you were raised, and it's not the same because the mom can't do everything, and it does have to be split up. So we're kind of learning all of that.
Yes, we're learning all of it. And I will say, and there is research to back this, many of our partners, in that millennial age gap, they'll say like dads are super involved, right?
Yeah,
Compared to how they were,
right.
back in the '80s and, all
Hmm.
that stuff. 100%. Um,
Yeah.
but, there's just this question of we're still the default, and
Hmm.
how are we managing all of that? Even though yes, we have help, but like if we're still the ones managing it, then it's still
Right.
on our plate, right? It's just we're sort of delegating things. Yeah.
So, kind of go the opposite way. What common thread do you see among mothers who are thriving or they're beginning to thrive even in the toughest seasons?
I think the common thread of women who, whether I've been working with them and they're really making a lot of progress and they're feeling a lot better, I think there is this understanding and a shift in some expectations, right? Of, what they thought motherhood was going to be like
Hmm.
versus what their reality is, really learning to identify like what is important to them, what are their values, what do they want to prioritize, and okay, we might know it, but then how do I actually put those things into place and start to prioritize things and have to set some boundaries, being able to say no, being able to carve out time to take care of yourself without feeling bad about it, right? Really being able to just say like it's okay for me to go take a shower,
Right. Yeah.
to feel guilty about that. It's okay for me to go out to dinner with a girlfriend or
Hmm.
to have a job or, to do different things and have a life. Like being a mom can be the most important part of your identity. And I think for a lot of women it is, but
Hmm.
it is just a part of who you are.
Right.
And there are so many other parts to who you are. And it's okay to nourish and value those other parts to who you are. And that doesn't mean that you're a bad mom or you don't love your kids. It just means that you're also honoring other parts of who you are as a person.
Right. Yeah. And so, what's one small or non negotiable ritual or moment that grounds you and refuels you?
Um, I would say on the more like day to day, kind of those micro moments, is I
Hmm.
really try to go out of my way and just be intentional and mindful with some little things that I do, even if it's something so basic as like, I'm not making coffee at home today. I'm going to Starbucks.
Right.
I'm like, I'm going to treat myself to an $8 latte,
Sometimes you got to do that.
Sometimes you have to do that, but with intention, right? Because people can go do that all the time and it just becomes like just something that you're doing. And so there's like an example of really trying to take, a typical task, but being like, you know what, I am going to go out of my way for myself today.
Right.
And I think on like a larger scale, because it doesn't happen super often, but I really do prioritize my female relationships, my friendships.
Hmm.
I have friends from elementary school to, friends that I'm developing now in my adult life. There is nothing that fills my cup and my soul like a night out with my girls.
Hmm. Yes,
Yeah.
so true. And it's so important to keep those friendships going. I think it's hard. It's really hard, but once you start prioritizing them, it makes you realize how much it's needed.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. And so, you obviously you help mothers reclaim their sense of self after kids, which again was something that I was like pretty unprepared for. Like I knew I was going to become a mom, but like you really do. It's a whole new chapter. Like it's part 2, I guess,
Yeah.
of your or whatever,
Yeah.
and you existed before and you're evolving now. So what's one piece of advice that you would give moms about reinvention or rediscovery that you wish you had heard earlier?
I think one thing that really resonated with me as I got more into the maternal mental
Mhm.
health space that I didn't really recognize so much, as I was becoming a mom myself was, we always hear about like bouncing back and,
Mhm.
getting your pink back or, you know, feeling like yourself again. And
Mhm.
I think that really kind of falls flat. I think it's more about transitioning and transforming into a new version of yourself,
Right.
and that is going to look different. I think if we have the expectation that we're just gonna go back to the way things were, we're constantly gonna feel whether it's, frustrated, disappointed, resentful, right? Because it's nothing is the same. So I
Right.
think it's more about trying to lean into this idea that I need to transform into a new version of myself, and there might be pieces of your old life that you still hold on to.
Right.
Running, I know for is one for both of us, but even that looks different than it did
Right.
when I was, before I had kids.
Uh-huh.
And so I think just leaning in and kind of having some of that flexibility there.
Yeah, and I do. I also love that. And again, it was like such an aha moment of that, like the bounce back. And it's like, what are you going to bounce back to when you're in your 20s going
Right.
out, every
Yeah.
night? Like that's
Right.
not
It-
happening
right.
again.
Nor do I want to. Like that was
No,
great
no,
at that time.
yeah.
And like, yeah, she
Yes.
comes out every once in a while.
Yes, yes. But it's like fun to evolve into like the new version of, yourself. And that is something that I think is so important for women to hear that you can still, you can have those little pieces, but it's never going to quite be the same. So a lot of patients that come in, therapy is very heavy, anxiety, depression, OCD, trauma, and your brand really mixes all of that with hope. You said, I think you deserve support that goes deeper than this is just mom life, kind of like what we said. So how do you keep that hope alive for your clients, and for yourself in the moments when the load feels relentless?
Yeah. And sometimes it does, right? Sometimes it
Hmm.
does feel just like super mundane and like, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Am I ever going to get out of this stage? I think one important piece is, and listen, hope is a protective factor
Right.
for any individual struggling with, different types of, more serious mental health concerns and issues, but there has to be that piece where, what are the little things that you have to look forward to? What are those
Hmm.
moments, right? I think it's like the new term is like identifying glimmers, right?
Yes. Yes.
Moments of joy. And I
Yes.
do appreciate that because I think that does give it a very realistic,
Truly.
tangible, way to identify like what it is. Like a glimmer, it's just like a little sparkly thing that's
Yeah.
there for a moment and then it fades, just like all of our emotions. And
Hmm.
that's with the positive and the negative, but being able to be mindful, be present, to even be aware that those things are happening around you. But you have to put in the time and the effort to be mindful and aware that they're there and to, really recognize that, you are going to have moments of joy, but there is going to be a lot of times where it's like, oh my God, how many times have I given a bath? Like, do I
I
really have
know.
to do this again? And that's okay. It's okay to sit in that too and be like, oh God, this kind of sucks.
Right.
That's
Yeah.
okay. It
And
doesn't
it's
mean
normal. Yeah.
yeah, right, like, it doesn't mean you're not a good mom or, like, I'll have people
Hmm.
say to me, like, "I hate playing with my kids." I'm like, "Yeah, same. I don't wanna play with
Yeah.
water trucks." Like, "No, thanks." And that
Yeah.
doesn't mean I'm a bad mom or I don't like my kids. It just means I don't like monster trucks.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that's so important. And so to you kind of mentioned this earlier when we talked about like, self-care is not selfish, your children don't need a perfect mom. What do you say to those moms that you work with who are constantly just saying like, because I sometimes do it. Oh, I'll do this once the kids go to bed or after this week or after this project. Like what do you say to them to be like, no, you need to do this?
Get that. And sometimes, yes, like, obviously even we're talking about like, oh, going to the gym at 5 a.m. and it's like, okay,
Yeah.
do I have to? Well, that does feel like it needs to sort of happen at that time for me
Mhm.
if it's going to happen on a consistent
Right.
basis. But I think part of it is saying like, it is going to feel very different. It is
Right.
going to be very uncomfortable. And that is a great sort of warning sign and flag for you that you're doing something different, that you're challenging
Hmm.
yourself in a new way. If it felt comfortable, then you're just doing the same thing. So I
Yeah.
think it's to really say, like, I am doubling down on this. I am making a commitment to myself. I am going to prioritize this. It's okay if it initially feels uncomfortable and I feel bad about it or whatever the emotions are. It's okay if other people feel uncomfortable about it. If your kids
Hmm.
aren't okay with it, like I went somewhere the other night and my kids were like, "Oh my God, you're never here." I'm like, okay, it's one night out of the house,
Right.
right? But like, that's okay. It's okay if husband's inconvenience sometimes because guess what? We're in a partnership and sometimes he does stuff that inconveniences me and that's why we work together.
Right.
Like all of that stuff is okay. So I think it's identifying that yes, it is going to be uncomfortable, but that's what you have to lean into.
Yeah, that something similar happened to me today. I got home like right around 6 and my daughter's like, "Well, why were you not home right after, And I'm like, we just had off, in New
Yeah.
Jersey, we had off the whole week last week. We were literally together 24/7 for the last like 9 days. And I'm like, we were just together for pretty much every single moment of the last 9 to 10 days. I'm just a little late today, okay?
Right. But you know what's funny? Even as you're saying this, I'm having like a little bit of an aha moment. The beauty of that, and I think something we could sort of learn from our kids is they are so present and they are
I
so in the
know.
moment that like
Yeah,
that is her world in that moment that like
I
mommy's not
know.
here right now. And how beautiful is that? Because we're all over the place.
Right.
Yesterday, next week, and it's like she's just like, "I wanted you here right now."
I
And that's,
know.
like, actually pretty cool. Although, it
I
doesn't always feel great for us, but,
know.
just something about kids, like, they are so mindful, they are so present, and
It's so true.
yeah, yeah, we gotta
And
work.
it is funny to, like, hear them talk about, like, what they think yesterday was
Yeah,
or, like, it's like, "Yeah, yesterday when we went to the beach," and I'm
yeah,
like, "That was, like,
yeah.
3 months ago,
Yeah,
okay?"
that was not yesterday, right, yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's the thing too, is, like, they really don't have that concept of
Mm,
time, so when we're like, "We're here every night," that means nothing.
that doesn't make any s yeah, it
No.
doesn't matter to them. And so in obviously today's world, we are both on social media, but that comes with comparison culture, mom expectation mania. How do you advise moms to really protect their mental space and build boundaries around their feed, their family, and their time?
Yeah, 100%. I feel sort of, I'm like, is this bad, business
I
for me to be telling people to get off social media?
I
Because
know.
that's where I do a lot of my marketing. But I will say, yeah, sometimes you just got to cut it out. And then, like,
Mhm.
you don't want to go cold turkey, that's fine. But you might need to do a little sweep through and go through who you're following
Right.
and it's like when you look at this content, if it's leaving you with feeling anything but joy, laughter, educated about something, like
Mhm.
unfollow or mute it for a little bit and see, like, do I feel better? The other thing is, and I feel like this is not super new, but like I know when I was running the marathon, everything on my page was about running. Now it's
Right.
not so much because I'm not doing that anymore. And you can go in and you can actually like clean up your algorithm and be like,
Mhm.
start me from square one because I'm getting all of this mom content or like elf on the shelf stuff and I don't do that and I feel horrible, right? You can clean that up. And I think just really being mindful of the time you're spending on your phone. I've done some posts about this and things like when I really disengage and I just put my phone away, it is amazing how different I'm able to show up for my kids
Mhm.
because I'm just able to be more present. I'm not distracted by the 5 million other things going on my phone.
Right.
And it really does make a big difference. So I think it is a little bit of just like the detox if you need it. If it's not serving you, if it's not making you feel good, you have the ability to set the boundary to not expose yourself to it.
And I think the unfollowing is so important because, like, when I first had my daughter, then that was like I followed all these mom accounts, all these mom influencers, and then I remember like one specifically, one influencer had a baby like a couple weeks before me, and I was like, oh my gosh, okay, like I'm gonna be next, like here, and then she was like out like 3 days later, like running errands and like all of this stuff. And then I had my daughter, and first it was the middle of COVID, it was 2020. So it was like nobody was doing anything. And I was not thriving. And I was like, wait, what is wrong? Why is she able to do this? And like, I'm not. And I had to unfollow her, and it like life was better. I
Yeah.
was like, I don't know what she's doing. It doesn't matter. Like,
Doesn't matter. And, I think too, even I think a lot of people will be like, oh, well, I look at this stuff, but I'm not really influenced by it.
mhm,
That's not you are.
you are. Yeah.
Whether you think you are or not, and that's why we do have to be very mindful of what we're
hmm
consuming. And because we're just constantly inundated. I think I saw a study once, it was like the average American gets a notification every 4 seconds
Oh
on
my
their phone.
gosh. Yeah.
Like it's insane, so it's like, how could you possibly feel like you can give your attention to anything? So you have to set boundaries, turn off your notifications, put your phone in the other room if you have to, unfollow. There's, like, a lot of cool things now too. I haven't used it, but there's, different devices that will, like, lock your phone for a bit,
Yeah, like the
like
brick.
yeah,
I
yeah,
like
exactly.
wanna try that out.
I know.
Like I heard
So
it's good.
yeah, yeah, but you have to put some of those boundaries in place for yourself.
So since starting your digital community, what's one thing that surprised you in a positive way, and what's one thing that kind of still scares you a little bit?
I think I don't know if it surprised me, but I've been maybe enjoying it the most is just, like, the connection and how much
Mhm.
I'm able to relate to other moms, and whether it's people that I know personally who are invested in my account or people that I don't know, but we've connected through social. I do think there is just such an immediate bond, when you meet another mom and you're just like, I get you,
Yeah.
that piece has been really nice. And, I think the challenging part of it is it's just always changing.
Mhm. My gosh, always.
Yeah, you never really kind of feel like you're on top of, there's
Mm,
always more to learn or different things to post, and again, that's I think kind of comes back to what we were just saying is like I have to set my own boundaries with it. And so I could be working all of the time,
yeah.
right? And it's like, all right, but I'm not really. And so I have to be able to be like, okay, that's done for now, and I can come back to it another time. It'll
Yeah.
still be there.
And it's hard. Even before this, we were watching a movie, which I didn't really like love, but the kids wanted to
Yeah.
watch it. And I was like, all right, well, while they're doing this, while we're sitting here, like I could like post or like plan out. And I was like, no, you know what? Like, I'm going to put this away and I'm just going to have to suck it up and watch this movie. I don't really want
Yes.
to watch it.
Yeah, 100%, because there is something different about being in the same room as somebody, but you're not engaged
Yeah.
in the same thing. It's
Right.
just parallel, right? And then you're not really connected as opposed
Right.
to, yeah, obviously it's not a movie that you're personally interested in, but at least you're having a shared experience, and that's where connection can develop.
Yeah. So for a mom listening who's maybe feeling overwhelmed, anxious, burnt out, what are some actionable steps that she can take like this week to move toward relief?
Yeah. I think, on a very, like I was talking about before, like a micro tool or strategy is
hmm
really just starting to figure out ways to get yourself regulated, get your nervous system regulated. Water is, like I always say, just add water, right? Like it is one of
hmm
the most regulating things. It is so easily accessible because there's so many ways to use it. You can drink
Say
it.
water.
You can wash your hands. I think that's one of my, like, most favorite effective strategies is just, like, turn the sink on, put my hands under cold water. If there's soap, lather it up,
hmm
get a little of the, aroma in there too. It is so grounding, but just really trying to take those moments, right? When you're recognizing that, like, you're getting anxious or you're getting angry or frustrated, can you find a way to take the pause so that you're not just reacting as opposed to responding?
hmm
And listen, that takes a lot of practice and a lot of other like deeper work to feel like super confident in your ability to manage some of that stuff. But I think that's a really easy place to start. And I think the other piece is like, can you just pick one thing that you're going to do for yourself? It could be 5 minutes, it could be 10 minutes, it could be like, I'm waiting to pick up my kids from daycare or school, or someone's in karate or whatever.
hmm
It's like, can I just do one thing for myself, whether maybe that's calling a friend you haven't spoken to in a really long time or a family member. Maybe it's saying, I'm going to prioritize and, go to a gym class or go for a walk or, whatever, cook a nice meal for myself, just something with intention.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that. And what do you envision for maternal mental health in like the next 10 years? What would you like to see?
I really hope that we just continue to have some of these conversations, and some of the stigma continues to decrease. I still think that, while the pendulum has certainly swung, and I'm sure you see it working in the high school,
Yeah.
that there is a lot more, especially with the younger generations being accepting, and much more open to treatment and
Hmm.
therapy and things like that. But I do think, we can still make some progress in that regard. I think the other thing is just really amping up the educational piece for women who are expecting,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
are working towards becoming parents. So whether that's, through they're pregnant themselves, they're a surrogate, they're adopting any sort of, caregiving role, but really talking at more not just about like what are some of the changes to your body and there's that one appointment maybe 6 weeks after, but like what does some concerns in regards to mental health really look like in that postpartum period, and what can you do about it proactively?
Yeah, something that I would absolutely love be a requirement is like you have to set up a therapy, just like your 6 week, physical appointment. You should have to have whatever 3, 6 week, therapy appointment because like I remember again with my daughter, like I was like, I need to like talk to someone about something. And it was like, okay, we can fit you in 3 months.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not going to help me right
Right.
now.
Yeah, yeah, and just making it accessible, right? I think that's
Yeah,
the other thing is it's very challenging for a new mom to be able to even consider, like,
right.
finding a therapist, making an appointment, navigating all of that, getting to
Mhm.
treatment. There's so much of that. Every once in a while, I'll get a client, I call them my unicorn clients, that they're pregnant or they're even family planning, and they just wanna have, like, a relationship established just in
Yeah,
case they want that
so
support postpartum. I'm like, "Mwah, mwah, mwah, love, love."
I know.
Amazing, there's nothing better, but that's rare, honestly.
Mhm.
And even in my own experience with my second, I had a pretty challenging pregnancy, like, emotionally and more in
Mhm.
regards to my mental health, and it was a COVID baby too, and it wasn't until, like, he was 18 months where I finally was like, "I need help," and
Yeah,
I was like, "I can't even call this postpartum, can I? I mean, he's a year and a half
right.
old," but you actually, and I think that's the other thing is, and I struggle with the word postpartum sometimes because I think typically, the lay person is just like, well, I don't have a baby anymore.
Right.
But the
Yeah.
reality is, if you have any type of mood or anxiety disorder that begins or, is related to postpartum, if it's not addressed, it just doesn't go away. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So, and that can be the trigger for some of these things. But so for me, here I am, I have an 18-month-old, and my therapist is like, wow, it sounds like you're really dealing with some depression and anxiety. And I'm like, but how? And I work in the field, right? So it's
Right.
like, and it's like, but how could that be? Like, I'm not postpartum anymore. And it's like, well, you weren't addressing it
It's
earlier. So it
right.
really can kind of still be treated in the same way, so really having more conversations about that, I think would be so helpful too. And I think follow up at the pediatrician, I know it's like a little bit not their world, but it would be so lovely if there was like some sort of screening there or support because parents are much more willing to make sure that they're going to all those pediatrician appointments. Oh,
Right.
my appointment can wait, or I got to reschedule. And if there was some sort of support there, I think
For
that would be
sure.
really helpful too.
Yeah. That would be awesome. So if you had to choose a soundtrack song for your motherhood journey so far, what would it be and why?
So I was like thinking about this question all day. I'm like Googling, I'm like, what are
Yeah.
some good cheeses? And they were all too corny. And then what song came to me? I was like, Ludacris, Move Bitch. Just
I love it.
like, I feel like in so many ways, it's like, I feel like I relate to that. Like, you're just like, get out the way, but also like
Mhm.
kids and how like they come at me. I'm like, I don't know. I'm going with Ludacris, Move Bitch.
I love it. And like it gets you also moving with
Yes,
the
and like a little amped up. If that comes on in a throwback, forget it.
yes. So you have told us so much, but given everything you've seen, done, and learned, what is your message for the running, wine loving moms out there who are juggling the miles, the wine glasses, the to do list, the kids, the self care, and maybe feeling like they're never enough? What do they need to hear today?
You are enough. That's just, you are. You are doing all of the things. You don't need to be perfect. Your house doesn't need to be perfect. Your kids, your family, your job, nothing. Like, it doesn't matter. The fact, like, even that list of things, I'm like, wow, oh my God,
Hmm.
that woman sounds so amazing doing all of these things, And I think, and I'm sure so many of the listeners have heard this, it's even just that idea though, that if you're even considering that I'm not doing enough, like that means you care. That means you are
Right.
showing up for your kids. And I just think, it's a little bit about like, let's take the pressure off. You are doing great. It doesn't mean that everything is perfect, but if you're giving your all, then that is your all.
Hmm.
And it doesn't mean that we can't grow and,
Right.
make positive changes and strides and things like that, but you are enough. And your kids, they just want you. They just want you and your time and your attention. That's all they want.
I love that. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end it. So that was wonderful. Thank you. So that's going to bring us to the end of the Running Wine Mom podcast. Thank you so much, Brittany, for giving everyone the knowledge and the advice and the steps that they can take to make motherhood just a little bit easier. So thank you for that.
Well, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes. And as always, thank you to the listeners for spending time with us on The Running Wine Mom. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a mom who needs to hear it. You can follow me on Instagram at the running wine mom underscore. And Brittany, where can the listeners find you?
I am at the mom chat, the dot mom chat on Instagram.
Perfect. And I will link all of that. So thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, you are strong, you are capable, and you are all amazing. Until next time, keep running, keep sipping, and keep embracing the joy of motherhood. Cheers. And I will be back next Tuesday.